let me introduce you to Molly Cook. Molly joined Ernst & Young in 2013 and is currently the U.S. Central Corporate Responsibility Leader. In her role, she works closely with regional and local office leadership in 44 markets to advance the firm's corporate responsibility strategy focused on education, entrepreneurs, and equity in the workforce through board placements, financial support, and volunteer engagement. Prior to joining Ernst & Young, she was a development professional at City Year Milwaukee and United Way of Greater Milwaukee. She also worked at United Way of Greater Milwaukee. Molly was an AmeriCorps member with L'Arche Cleveland. And she is currently on the Big Shoulders Fund Chairman Advisory Council on the Girl Scouts Gold Award Scholarship Committee, and was a former member of the Girl Scouts Financial Literacy Advisory Committee, and was a Big Sister through Big Brothers Big Sisters for 8 years. Molly, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Ileana. It is such a delight to be here, and I greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak to all of your alumni today. So really appreciate this opportunity. And as Ileana said, my name is Molly Cook. I'm incredibly fortunate to lead corporate responsibility for our U.S. Central here at EY. And we have such reverence for all that you're doing at P&G, and so delighted to speak with your alumni network here today. And this, I think, is a topic that all of us can really relate to and appreciate, especially those, of us that are, in this space that, at EY, our purpose is to build a better working world, and that's an incredibly bold and audacious purpose, I might say. And one of the ways we do that is through thinking about how we can be incredibly inclusive and intentional as it relates to our D&I efforts. And so today, I'm excited to kind of take you through a little bit about, how do we build a better working world, specifically through empowering women? And to do that, I'm going to start by really highlighting, well, what exactly is D&I? And why does it matter? And I'll share a little bit about our approach to D&I here at EY and how we deliver upon it. And also kind of explain to you, why we feel confident to speak on this topic, why us here at EY. From there, I'm really going to get into the meat of the presentation. And it's really around a tool that we've developed here called Power Up. It's a tool that we have built internally, and I'll share with it in a second here. We now share it with our clients, and it's really a tool to ensure that women have the tools and the resources they need to persist in leadership roles at their organization and to truly feel empowered in all that they do. And then at the end, obviously, we'll have time for questions. But as Ileana said, let's make sure that we make this interactive. So if you have questions kind of along the way, please feel free to interject and ask them. We'll show some videos as well. So hopefully this will be an exciting, next 40 minutes or so. So to kind of kick off here, let's just take a minute to really level set. What is D&I and why does it matter? I think that the vast majority of us know, obviously, kind of the core tenets of what diversity and inclusiveness is. For us at EY, when we think about it at the core, diversity is truly about unique perspectives. It's about differences. When we think about differences, it's far greater than gender and ethnicity and nationality, but it goes all the way to thinking about different thinking styles, different religious backgrounds, different technical abilities, different neurobiology opportunities that each one of us have. From there, we think about then, what is inclusiveness? Inclusiveness is leveraging all of the unique differences that each one of us have through our diversity to achieve better business results. Because we know that if we're able to bring our best selves to work, bring all of those differences that make each one of us unique, that's where we can contribute at the highest level and perform at our personal best in every encounter that we have at work. And we're going to talk in a second here about the business results that speak to that in terms of how, if you embrace diversity and if you thrive on inclusiveness, how at the end of the day, your organization is truly just going to thrive. Every one of us knows this, that now more than ever, diversity and inclusiveness absolutely matters. And there's some core tenets of it, leading organizations we've seen that are driving innovation, they're improving their brand, they're impacting their bottom line, and more than anything, they have an engaging environment for their stakeholders. And so we know that the organizations that are out there front and center that are focusing on D&I, they're able to do these things. And there's some data points here on the screen here that I think are incredibly compelling. That when you take a look at organizations across industries, that are rated highly for D&I, obviously P&G is one of those, they have an immense success in the market, 70% more likely success in the market than those organizations that aren't rated highly for D&I. That's incredible. Additionally, 45% more likely improved market share. And their team collaboration is 50% better as well. And so you see that there's a business case for this. There is absolutely an ROI at the end of the day to really substantiate why we need to focus on diversity and inclusiveness and why we need to focus on embracing unique perspectives and different ability to think. Our own research at EY really just validates all of this, and that, you know, best in class engagements, absolutely, they have better retention, stronger revenue growth, and without a doubt, there's higher profitability. And the data points here on this slide kind of exactly just show that. You know, this probably isn't any surprise, but I think there's some key trends right now that are shaping D&I that ultimately did kind of help inform this tool that I'm going to share with you here in a moment. But also it just kind of gets at, you know, what are the trends that we're looking at EY as we look to kind of consider what is going to be the shape of our diversity and inclusiveness strategy. And these four key trends in particular are really around globalizing workplace, recruitment and retention challenges that I think each one of our organizations are facing, you know, the financial performance, as well as public scrutiny. So let's just go through these here real quickly. You know, a globalizing workforce, I think this is really phenomenal when you think about it. By the year 2025, which is just around the corner, somewhat hard to believe, millennials will comprise 75% of the global workforce. That is just unbelievable, with the majority of them being born with a first language other than English. That is just absolutely phenomenal when you look at that data point, I think. And so that just shows us, again, what a case there is for embracing diversity and inclusion. Also, though, we're seeing that there's, you know, each one of us have facing with different recruitment and retention challenges. But absolutely, right now, we're seeing a global talent shortage that's at its highest in over 10 years. And the average time that employees are remaining at their jobs is decreasing. That's likely no surprise to anyone on this webinar right now. But we're also seeing that there's an opportunity for an improvement in financial performances. And so what we mean by that is that organizations that are in the top, let's say, quarter, so top 25% or so, for ethnic and cultural diversity, they're more likely to achieve above average profitability. And that goes back to the previous stats we were sharing on that last slide. But again, there is such an opportunity to improve financial performance when we embrace D&I. I think also another trend that is likely no surprise to anyone that has been shaping kind of the landscape of D&I and really where we're looking at it from here at EY, as well as the clients that we work with, is just recent public events. And, you know, so many public events recently have highlighted the lack of diversity within specific industries. But as well, you know, I think the Me Too movement in particular was one that really put a spotlight on some things that were happening in various workplaces that we needed to address, as well as the wage inequity across industries. And that's something that truly we're going to get at in just a second when we talk about this overall tool that we're going to share with you here in a minute or so. So those are just kind of the trends that I think are important to keep in mind when we think about, you know, why does D&I matter? And so, you know, what is our approach to D&I, and how do we deliver that here at EY? You know, and when we think about diversity and inclusion at EY, it really has been a continuum and a growth journey for us. And when we think about it, absolutely, it's just incredibly critical that your diversity efforts work simultaneously with your inclusiveness efforts. And so what's on the screen here now is what we like to think is a roadmap for success. The ultimate goal of embracing D&I is to ensure that you have highest performing teams. We've seen that, you've seen that with the organizations that you've been with, including P&G, that when you're able to have highest performing teams, that's where you're at the peak of your performance, and that's where your organization can thrive. To do that, you need to have diversity working simultaneously with your inclusiveness work to create positive change. And it's not a linear fixed progression. I think that's one thing that is really important to note here, is that this thing can be done at different places, and they can be in diversity inclusion. It doesn't just happen, you know, immediately, and it's not flat, but instead it absolutely kind of happens as a progression upwards, if that makes sense. And so the goal for us really is to understand, how can we be an organization that has a shared definition of success that works towards a common end state of highest performing teams? And absolutely, diversity and inclusion does just that. And there's ways that our organization can help advance our diversity efforts, but as well, there's ways that each one of our individuals plays a critical role in that. So we want to empower every single person here at EY and all the clients that we work with to understand the great role that they take in really driving our diversity and inclusion efforts. I referenced earlier that, and this is no surprise to anyone, but when we started our D&I journey here at the firm, like so many organizations, it was really around a focus on recruiting, retaining, and promoting women. And absolutely, that is still a cornerstone of what we do at EY. But since then, I'd like to think that we've had some aha moments where we've realized that, it's not enough to just have diversity, and we've needed to expand and broaden what our definition of diversity is. And I think, it's equally important to realize that along our journey, we've begun to realize that it's not just about diversity. It goes back to the previous slides that I just referenced, that it's about inclusiveness, and it's diversity and inclusiveness are equally important. And along the ways, we've brought in the definition of diversity, but also we kind of realized that there are so many other differences that are important when we think about broadening our definition of diversity. There's age, there's background, there's thinking styles, there's religious backgrounds, there's nationalities, all those different things that we need to be incredibly intentional about including. And why, one thing that we're doing that we're so intentional about, that I know other organizations are as well, we're really embedding D&I into all of our business processes. It's a global focus of ours here at the firm. And so it's really important to note that D&I isn't just some function within HR. It's not something that we look at from a recruitment or retention data point, but it absolutely is critical to all of our business processes. And so we're challenging ourselves when we're building out our teams that are serving our clients. We're saying to ourselves, are we bringing different perspectives to our clients? Are we bringing unique backgrounds to our clients? And so making sure that everything we do from a D&I perspective is embedded into all that we bring to our clients at EY. Similarly, we want to ensure that we empower all of our people at EY to be inclusive leaders. And I think this is something that everyone can learn from, is that we want everyone to, be a leader at EY, but it's a far different thing to have them be an inclusive leader. An inclusive leader is obviously somebody that appreciates the unique perspectives that everyone brings and embraces those on their teams. And so when we think about, embedding D&I into all of our business processes, a key tenet of that is empowering all EY people to be inclusive leaders. And we have a lot of workshops on that, and we do a lot of intentional work around what exactly that means. So why EY? Like P&G, we're really proud to be, I would say, at the forefront of diversity and inclusion. We've gotten a lot of recognition for our D&I work, and here's some data points that really substantiate that. We've been named to the Diversity Inc.'s inaugural Top 50 Hall of Fame in 2018, and that was after being #1 on the Diversity Inc.'s kind of top 50 companies for diversity in several years. And so we're really proud to be recognized for that. We're incredibly proud that we are an organization that embraces flexibility for all, and that we recognize that every person at EY in varying forms may have a need to be somewhat flexible, and whether they're taking care of an elder parent, whether they have a situation at home where they have a child that is in need of them. We want to ensure that we have flexibility for all, and we really embrace that through a variety of things. Beyond that, though, we really, I would say, have transformed a lot of what we think about our diversity inclusive efforts to be around the idea of a culture of belonging. So what does it mean to feel like you belong, where you can come to work and be your true and authentic self? And that's really one thing that we're intentionally focused on here at EY, is just creating this immense culture of belonging. And from there, a lot of things that it's probably no surprise so many great organizations have employee resource groups. We call them professional networks. And we've gone kind of a far way in terms of, supporting our families as they look to build their families. And so we have a new Pathways to Parenthood program where we provide U.S. employees up to $25,000 to cover the cost of infertility procedures, surrogacy, and adoption fees. And my family is actually taking advantage of that as we speak, as we adopt our 4th child. And it's just another way that I think EY is at the forefront of diversity and inclusiveness. And again, we're so proud to be kind of alongside P&G in that. So that frames kind of what we're talking about today as we think about diversity and inclusiveness, right? I think what's really important now is to think about, you know, how do we empower women though? So a key tenet and some of the data points that we're going to see here in a second is that we have a huge discrepancy right now in the world as it relates to women leadership. And worldwide, less than 7% of CEOs are women. And so EY has developed a tool called Power Up. And some of you might be saying, you know, well, why the focus on coaching women, right? So this actually came about originally as a tool created by a few of our executive coaches at EY. They wanted something to leverage when working with female coaching clients. And so they were working with clients in particular of ours internally at the firm. And they began to realize that when working with men and women alike, of all different service lines that had all different backgrounds, they began to see some incredibly popular trends that women in particular faced when rising to leadership positions. And they were not only trends, but they were challenges. And there were some behaviors that women in particular exhibited. And so they thought, rather than work one-on-one with a client on the executive coaching team, what if we developed a tool and we took it to all of our EY professionals and we said to them, there is an ability to really identify some behaviors that women in particular exhibit. We have the data and the facts to prove it. And we're going to look at what those behaviors are, and we're going to coach men and women alike on how that they can release those diminishing behaviors and embrace some power building behaviors. So we know that we need to focus on women, and we know that we need to because for us, it's really imperative to build our purpose of building a better working world. But like I said, there's some really significant data here that substantiates it. You know, it will take another 202 years for women to achieve gender parity in the workforce. I'm going to say that again, 202 years. That's just unbelievably staggering. That in 2019, we're still at 202 years away from that. Worldwide, less than 7% of women are CEOs, or 7% of CEOs are women, I should say. And women are still only making 80% of what our male counterparts are making. And so, you know, absolutely, we know that there is a strong connection here with data points. But I think one thing that's really encouraging for us is that an organization that has 30% or more female leaders, they can add up to 6 percentage points to their net margin. Again, that goes back to the business case that we talked earlier, how important it is to be incredibly inclusive. Now I'm excited to kind of share with you a quick video that just kind of highlights why this is so important to us at EY in terms of ensuring that we empower all women to feel like they belong.
I'm sorry it's taking so long. We tried this before and it was working well.
Eliana, it's working on my end. So would you like me to replay it or?
Yes, I think. Yes, because still thinking.
Okay.
Oh, people could see it just fine. So maybe it's just different.
Okay.
I want to continue on. You're
Okay,
good.
fantastic. Oh, good. I'm so glad. That's great. Okay. I'm so glad you all were able to see that video because I think it just demonstrates so beautifully that women belong. They belong in all of these places. And I know for me, this is so personal. There's one data point that I didn't note here that is worth calling out, that by the age of 6, girls start to really have their confidence plummet. And they began to consider that boys are better than themselves at the age of 6. And I have a 5-year-old girl, and she truly believes her goal in life is to work downtown in a tall building. We live here in Chicago. And all she wants to do when she grows up is take a train like her mom and go to work every day in a tall building. And she believes this. And I can't believe that I live in a world where in a year, she's going to doubt potentially that she can do that. And for me, that's why it's so personal, because you saw the data points, and they're about worldwide CEOs, and there's about gender parity, and they can seem almost high level. But when you take a step back, so many of these data points are incredibly personal. And that's why I think it's really important for all of us to frame this around why it's so important for all of us to belong. So again, why did we develop this? We did this so that women can be the best versions of themselves. This is a tool that we know, we've seen it work here internally at EY. We've been incredibly delighted that all those that we share with at EY have just really embraced it. It's improved their performance, their confidence. And so several years ago, we began to have clients come to us and said, we've heard about your Power Up tool. We want to learn more about that. Can you come in and share it with our professionals? And so we're delighted that we do just that. And so we are continually going into clients and sharing with them, this idea of this tool. And I'm excited to share it with you here today. We like to think of the Power Up tool as a gift, and it's a gift that we want you to continually unpackage and unwrap. And as you do that, share it with others. And so this is a tool that we're hopeful you can use as a self-reflection exercise, but then additionally, use it in your own ability to build your personal and professional career, to mentor, coach, sponsor women yourselves, or to mentor and coach yourself as well. So what does Power Up stand for? Power Up is really an acronym at EY that was developed to help us really authentically live, lead, and inspire women. We'll explore each of these concepts separately. So I'm going to take a minute here and just go through them each separately. But let me just set the stage for you that what I'm going to do here is explain each one of these concepts separately. I'm going to explain what we call some diminishing behaviors for each. What are some power building behaviors for each? So we're going to dive into each one of these 5 things around projecting confidence authentically, what it means to own your career, what it means to widen your network, how you can elevate your communication, and the last one, realizing your purpose, which we have a tool that we're actually going to share with each one of you, a handout, because we realize realizing your purpose is not something we can accomplish within an hour webinar, if that makes sense. So these are all really bold ideas. And again, all of these ideas came to us by our executive coaching team as they began. These were the themes that they saw with the women executives that they were working with at EY. So we'll start off by talking about projecting confidence authentically. And really, this is the first tenet, that first thing that our executive coaches began to see with women in particular, that they began to see that women in particular did not project confidence authentically. So what does that mean? What are some diminishing behaviors that we encourage our people to let go of? I think so many of us can relate to this, men and women alike, that when we walk out of an annual review, we might have been given 99% of the review, been glowing reviews and just raving about the great work performance that we've had. But then at the end of the review, our boss or our manager will say, I think there's a great way that you can really improve your performance in the upcoming year and continually challenge yourself. And they share that kind of 1% increase opportunity to grow. And then we walk out of the review and all we do is focus on that. We look at it as a misstep. And that's one of the behaviors we encourage our people to let go of, is putting a stronger emphasis on missteps rather than successes. I was leading a session for one of our clients recently, and an executive woman was talking about, a big part of projecting confidence authentically is walking in confidently to a meeting room and being assured, no matter if you're man or woman, what seat you're going to take at the table. And if you're a woman, when you walk into the room, you don't take the seat that's, a side seat at the wall versus at the table itself. And it was incredibly interesting. A woman executive in the room, she raised her hand and she said, I literally just the other day was invited to go speak with our most senior leaders at our firm. And she said, I walked into the room and there were several chairs at the actual table. And here I was presenting to them. There were all these chairs at the actual table in the room. And then there was a line of chairs that were essentially overflow against the wall. And she said, I went and sat in one of those chairs against the wall. And as the meeting started, somebody came over to me and said, what are you doing? Get to the table, be at the table. And that's exactly what this is talking about, is understanding that not only you need to be at the table, but you have an ability to project confidence by pulling out a seat and actually sitting at the table. And so that's exactly what projecting confidence authentically is it's letting go of that, imposter phenomenon that some of us might have, that worrying that you might say or do something that or imply that you're not capable, but instead walking into a meeting, walking tall by showing that you're physically and intellectually confident. Also understanding and acknowledging that you have unique talents and that your team can thrive based on those. And also, moving past your fear of failure and taking action on things. That's really what projecting confidence authentically means for us at EY. If I were leading this to a group of individuals right now, is where we'd say, okay, what are some actions that you want to take to build your strengths? And I encourage you, each one of you right now, to do just that if you'd like, to think about, what are some diminishing behaviors you can let go of, and what are some power building behaviors you can embrace. We're now going to watch a quick video that I think does just exactly this. And I'm hopeful each one of you will be able to see it, because it absolutely demonstrates how we as women and girls and men alike can support women and girls feeling that they can project themselves incredibly authentically and confidently. Everyone, I apologize there. I clicked a button too soon, but I think what is really powerful about that video run like a girl is it just demonstrates that we have these preconceived notions, and that so many of us, men and women alike, when we're asked, how does a woman exhibit themselves and how does a girl exhibit themselves, we portray them in a negative light. And so what I just cut off there at the end was going to the little boy and saying, he said, do you think you just insulted your sister? And he said, well, no, I insulted girls, but not my sister. And again, it just is going back to this whole notion of remembering that at the end of the day, these stereotypes can really take us at a negative spot. And so looking at them looking at all of us as individuals and what that can take. So with this tool that we have, this Power Up tool, for each one of the elements, we have a variety of resources. As we present this to our clients, we share with them and we say, and I'll share this with you now, is that the whole notion of projecting confidence authentically in all of these is something that you can't just stop the learning after you're just introduced these diminishing behaviors and power building behaviors. But instead, we introduce you to resources that really help you continue the learning. And we've included books, articles, TED Talks in each one of these areas, so you have choices on how you want to learn best. And so E's in particular, I think, are really important to look at. These are all resources specific to projecting confidence authentically. The Amy Cuddy one in particular, if you haven't watched it, it's a TED Talk. It's really interesting. She's a social psychologist that specializes in nonverbal experience of power and dominance. And really, she kind of looks at that nonverbals govern how others perceive us, and she explores how we can also change the way we think of ourselves. And I think some of you may have heard before the Wonder Woman pose or the starfish pose. And it's really the whole idea of being aware of our posture and stance. And it is proven in biology that if you stand kind of in the Wonder Woman pose, where your hands are at your hips, your chin is facing towards the sky, and your legs are confidently separated somewhat in parallel to your shoulders, that the hormone that increases confidence goes up, and the hormone that increases anxiety goes down. And so if we stand with our head up and our hands on our shoulders, and we look confidently, and we do this for a variety of minutes, it is proven that our confidence goes up and our anxiety goes down. There's so many different things on here, resources. I won't spend any more time here just in the interest of time, but I think this is something that is really good for everyone to know, that there is great resources available. The next thing that we take a look at is around the whole notion of owning your career. And what does it mean to mindfully take control of your career in life? And back in August, my husband called me and he said, there's this role at EY that I'm really interested in. I'm going to send you the link and let me know what you think. So he emails it to me, and I click on the link, and I think, he must have sent me the wrong link. This can't be the role that he's thinking that he's going to apply for. And the reason I thought that was I looked at the job requirements and the expectations of the skills. And I saw that, I thought that my husband didn't meet all of those. And so I called him back and I said, wow, that looks like a great role. Tell me why you think that you'd be a good fit. And he goes, yeah, I looked at some of those skills requirements and I didn't meet a lot of them, but I think a lot of my past experiences would help me learn some of those things. And I think I would do it really well. Well, he started at the firm in October, and he now was asked to take on a new role here in July. That is just a great indication of women tend to think they need to have 80, if not 90% of these skills that are required for a job rec to apply, whereas men, closer to 30, 40%. That's a data point that I think is really important, and that goes to one of the diminishing behaviors around owning your career, believing that your skills are lacking, and therefore avoiding roles or projects that you are interested in. Another thing that women in particular tend to do is take on traditionally female roles because they think it's expected of them. So whether that means planning networking events, coordinating the baby showers for their team members, taking notes in a meeting, those are all great learning opportunities for everyone. So instead, why not rotate who does those types of things? Why not rotate when you come to a meeting who takes the notes or who plans the baby showers, that point of thing? Women also in particular tend to work to the point of exhaustion, to the point where they're depleting themselves mentally, physically, and emotionally. And that's why we encourage individuals to let go of those, what we call diminishing behaviors around owning your career, and instead to embrace some of these power building behaviors and to really understand, what does it mean to maintain a personal well-being, to let their energy and enthusiasm for long-term vitality to thrive. And so, so many of us, we really encourage our women to, all right, if it's important for you to go to a yoga class at 6 o'clock on a Thursday, put that on your calendar, but don't just stop there. Invite somebody or invite to your team calendar and ensure that they hold you accountable and let them know, yeah, you're going to leave work maybe at 5:30 on Thursday. And if you're in the midst of a busy season, let them know that you're going to be offline for a bit. You might come back that night or the next morning on Friday morning. But when you do, you're going to bring a better self to work because you're going to be having maintained your active vitality through that yoga class. It's a small thing, but we've seen that it goes an incredibly major way when we're able to do that. And similarly, power building behaviors really are around factoring personal and professional priorities into your daily decisions. So this is what it means to own your career. These are the diminishing behaviors we encourage you to let go of, and the power building behaviors we encourage you to really embrace. Similarly to projecting confidence authentically, there's a lot of great resources here that we think that, are ones that we would encourage you to either to read or to listen to. One in particular, I mentioned, earlier about women tend to work to the point of exhaustion. And really, there is a great book here by Arianna Huffington, Thrive, where she talks about just that, where she literally worked to the point of exhaustion, where she had a physical injury because she fell. And she talks about that there is nothing more important than taking care of yourself. And if you don't bring your best self to work, you can't perform at your highest level. That is part of owning your career. And so those are one of the resources that we like to share around this whole notion of owning your career. The next piece that is really important here is understanding, how do you widen your network? And not just widening your network, but how do you identify how to leverage your network? And so when we think about our network here, one thing that's really important for us is understanding, what are the differences between mentors, coaches, and sponsors? So mentors are the people that we have direct access to, that they can coach us or they can work with us one-on-one, and we can learn from them. Coaches are those that are absolutely those that can really help us with our performance in particular, and they can see us side by side with our performance and really can coach us on how to improve. Sponsors are those that are different though. They're in unique positions that they have kind of an executive ability to help identify up and coming leaders. And so there's people that are in the position of power, that they are the people that when the decision making comes to make a decision about who is going to be an upcoming leader, they're the ones that can raise their hand for you. And so when we think about diminishing behaviors to choose to let go of as it relates to widening your network, it's really thinking about, who are those mentors that you might have that no longer serve you? But beyond that, how can you broaden your network? So instead of keeping your network narrow, and instead of being, a little bit narrow and thinking about who can be in your network, challenge yourself and think about, well, who are the sponsors in your organization that really, truly could be ones that could help you? And look to embrace them as part of your network. Go out of your way to introduce yourself and make sure that they know who you are. But now that you've had your network established, a key part of it is making sure that you feel confident in asking your network for help. And so not being reluctant to ask that network for help. And I think, one thing that just came up at a client event that we did with this session was somebody raised their hand and said, there's a lot that goes into the whole notion of mentoring and coaching and sponsoring, but we don't put enough emphasis on the power of reverse mentoring and what the mentor can get out of the relationship, not just the mentee. And I think that's an incredibly powerful thing to think about, was that, when we think about this network that we're building, it's not one-sided, and don't come to it with the notion of, this is my network that I'm going to build my own board of directors, so to speak, but rather there's a mutual opportunity for each one of us to gain different, best practices from each other. I think another portion here that's really important to think about is, as you build your network, it's also about, inviting others to build up their own backgrounds and resources and tools. So we encourage people to let go of believing that it's easier and quicker to do something themselves, but instead embrace and allow others to join you with different tasks and responsibilities. That's also part of, what it means to widen your network. There's some really, I think, great resources as it relates to widening your network to continue to look at. One in particular that I always call out, because I think it's so smart, is Sheryl Sandberg's quick read here. It's called Just That She Just Nailed the Subtle Way Men Hold Women's Career Back. And what she suggests is that men are included in many more activities, which helps them build their network. And what we mean by that is so many networking activities tend to be gender focused towards men. They tend to be based on going to sporting events, golfing, cigar bars, activities that are more gender stereotypically aligned to males. What she suggests, though, is what a beautiful opportunity we have to take a step back and to say, all right, instead of having some of these stereotypical networking events where we're going to go golfing on a business trip, where we're going to go to a cigar bar, what if we surveyed the team and asked everyone, what are some things that you like to do to really socialize and to network, and to equally do those things? Because we know that there's men that don't golf. We know that there's men that don't like going to sporting events. Equally, we might find that teams say, I would love to take a cooking class together. Or equally, we might say the team wants to go fly fishing together, learn something really unique together. I think that's just a great example of how you can look intentionally to widen your network. And I think in particular, this quick read is one that we always call out, because it is something that both men and women can do alike to really support each other as they look to widen your network. The next area and kind of content here is really around elevating your communication. It's about speaking. And everyone, just my apologies here. I'm getting a note that you can't see my screen. And Ileana, can you confirm? Can everyone see my screen?
I can see the widen your network slide.
Okay. For some reason, it says that it's paused.
Do you want to like escape and present again?
Yeah, let me just try that.
There.
Fantastic. So this notion of, how do you elevate your communication? So we saw some trends that women tend to, exhibit things around their communication style. And, some things in particular are, one that I know that I do myself is the whole idea of kind of sending confusing messages, using too many modifiers. When I started at the firm, I originally went to school for journalism, and I'm fairly verbose, as you probably all are picking up on. And I would send these emails when I got to the firm, and I was really proud of them because I would use verbose language, and they would sometimes be somewhat long. And a partner one time gave me the most incredible feedback. I will never be able to thank him enough for it. He said, Molly, you're a great writer. You've got to condense your emails, though. Give me a couple sentences. Your subject line should tell me exactly what you're looking for. And if you need to send more than a paragraph, schedule a call. So many times women will start an email by saying, I apologize, I just want to quickly ask you a question. I simply want to ask you a question. You don't simply want to do anything. You need to do something. Don't send confusing messages. Don't use modifiers, weak words, qualifiers, or any emotional language. Women in particular also oftentimes we ask permission unnecessarily. And beyond that, we often use language that diminishes our behavior. A key theme to this is also emojis. Men and women alike do this, that if you don't have a good rapport with somebody and you get an email from them and there's emojis and there's lots of exclamation points and LOLs, you tend to kind of doubt their professionalism, and you begin to kind of focus on those emojis and those, exclamation points rather than focusing on what their message is. And so we encourage women and men alike to build up power building behaviors around elevating your communication that really exudes confidence through the words, the tones, and the body language they use. And I think all of us know that women do this. We over apologize. We apologize for things we have absolutely no control over. And we start sentences so often with, I am sorry. So we're going to show a quick video now that I think just so beautifully demonstrates exactly that concept of over apologizing. I'm sure many of you were laughing as you were watching that because sorry, I'm not sorry, but also just one thing that always gets me is the women in the boardroom where they all kind of knock into each other with their chairs because they're moving over because somebody else has walked in the room. And it just goes to show that we just absolutely over apologize. So instead, we encourage our women to exude confidence through their body language and just not apologize, but be confident they deserve to ask a question. Some of the resources here that I think just kind of further go to that, one in particular is a quick read that the Washington posted. And it was an article that talks about the amplification process, where women in the Obama's first cabinet, they got together to discuss to ensure their voices were heard. And they called it amplification, so that if one woman made a suggestion, another woman would say, I agree with what Condoleezza just said, we should do that. And this happened because women in the cabinet of the United States of America felt that they were not being listened to. So they would get together ahead of cabinet meetings and they would say, let's amplify each other and let's make sure that our voices are heard. And we call this out because we want to ensure people appreciate that this isn't just something that happens in our own offices or something that just happens in our own school board meetings. This happens at the highest ranking of the United States government, where women feel they're not being listened to. So next time you're in a meeting and a woman shares an idea and it's glossed over, take a step back and say, wait a minute. And you just mentioned that. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Or if it's completely glossed over and a male brings it up 5 minutes later, revert back to the woman who said it originally and said, you know what, Dan, that's a great idea you just brought up. But Ann said that 5 minutes ago. Ann, could you just kind of explain a little bit more what your thoughts were around that? It's something that we can do very intentionally, and it's very powerful that we can do. So that's one of the resources that we really encourage everyone to take a look at. The last concept here is around realizing your purpose. And this is probably one of the most long-standing goals that we want our people to realize when they walk out of here, is it knowing who you are and what you believe in. An African tribal leader was quoted as saying that there's 2 important days in your life. There's really only 2. There's the day that you were born and the day that you realize why you were born. And so for us, we have a handout that is a purpose clarification worksheet that each one of you are going to get. And really, it starts by challenging ourselves to understand, what are your values? What do you truly value within your life? Beyond that, then, it takes a look at, what are some of your top core values and what are some of your gifts that you have? What are some of the gifts that you have that you know that you are very skilled at? And what are some of the passions that you have as well within your life? And then it takes it to challenge you to understand, okay, from those gifts, the passions and your values, put them together and develop a personal why statement. So much of this is rooted in some of the kind of the ideas of Simon Sinek, of understanding, you know, why it is so important to identify what your purpose is and your reason for being. And so again, we encourage each one of you to take this handout, this purpose clarification worksheet, and understand what are your gifts, what are your passions, and what are your values, to understand how you can create your personal why statement. And exactly that is what we're talking about here on this slide, is we've identified some of the diminishing behaviors that we encourage women to let go of, and some power building behaviors that we know that we all can embrace. And there's different resources that are available similarly to the other ones. Obviously, one of them is a Simon Sinek TED Talk, because he is, you know, kind of the foremost leader on the idea of purpose, that we encourage you to watch, but would really encourage each one of you to take that purpose clarification worksheet that is a handout from this webinar and really spend some time with it to understand what is your purpose and how can you really activate that purpose. So that is the Power Up tool. That is the tool that we've developed because we've seen here at EY, women in particular have faced some unique challenges, and they've exhibited some behaviors that we have deemed diminishing behaviors. And these are the 5 things that we think women can do and men can support them in to let go of some of these diminishing behaviors and embrace power building behaviors. So I appreciate, we just went through a lot of content. We typically spend, you know, upwards of 2 to 3 hours with our clients just going over these 5 concepts. And so now I'd welcome any questions that the group has, or anything that anyone wants to share themselves, some aha moments, if that makes sense.
So we only have a couple of minutes, and I'm sure there's many questions. So I personally want to say thank you to you for all of this. You know, everything that you've shared, I think I resonated with a lot. The question that I personally have is about the tool itself.
Yeah.
You know, how can, if people are interested, how can they access it and be able to read through all the marvelous resources?
Absolutely. We have an informational handout that we're always happy to share with folks. And so happy to share that along with you, Leilani, and it can be shared from there. If individuals have an organization that they're interested in bringing this to, that's also something that, you know, they can bring forward. We can work through here at EY.
Perfect. Awesome. Yes, that would be great. And that's additional to the handout that we're giving out, sending out to everybody after the webinar, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Perfect. That's awesome. And just one more question before we wrap it up. I loved the story about your daughter, looking at that young age to work in a tall building and work the way you work. And that resonated with me because I remember my daughters when they were that age thinking about the same thing. However, now that they're in their teen years, because of the way they're seeing things evolving, they're now doubtful that that's actually what they want to do. So that I feel like the work that you're doing and that a lot of people are doing on that is really, really important. So kudos to the tools that you have, because I think that's going to be very important.
I'm so glad you acknowledged it, Ileana. I mean, there's so much research that girls' confidence plummets once they hit puberty, and I think that what you just said is just a great indication of that.
Yeah, totally. And then one more question. Does the Power Up tool have topics for the broader leadership, employees, etc.? These topics seem generally geared towards women specifically, not the organization.
Yep, great question. So we have different tools at EY. This is the one that is very gender specific towards women. There also is another tenet to it around the role that men play in empowering women. So we have a dedicated tool around, how do we incorporate men in this? But we have a lot of other tools at EY about, the core tenets of leadership. This is just one of them that we use around empowering women.
Yep, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Molly, again, for everything. And we look forward to the handout and to reaching out to you if anybody has any additional questions or wants to follow up or bring this great tool into their organization. So thank you very much again.
Thank you all. I so appreciate the opportunity and hope that everyone has a great day.
You too, Molly. Thank you. And a couple of announcements before we close this enrichment series webinar. All our webinars are recorded, so you can go back and review anything you want to listen to again. I'll definitely go back and review everything that Molly shared with us today, because I still want to take a couple of notes and share with your friends. It's in our YouTube P&G Alumni Network channel, so you can go in and see not only this one, but all the previous ones as well. We also invite you to get involved. Sign up for updates through our website, pngalums.com, support the foundation or partner with us, volunteer, start, join a chapter, or send us an email with any other recommendation, thoughts that you would like at hello@pngalums.com. Next month, we have another exciting webinar with Sarah Matthew, where she will be talking to us about leadership lessons from the trenches. So join us on August 13th at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for this. And this is actually my last webinar as your host. I'll come back in 2020. So thank you all for listening. And next month, you'll have Amir Ganand, who will be your host for the second half of this year. So thank you again, everyone. This is your host, Ileana Rojas, and I wish you all a great rest of your day, wherever in the world you may be. Thanks for joining.